That is more like it. We were all concerned. We were fretting. We were chewing fingernails. We thought that all was lost after the loss at Maryland in week 1. But alas, you come in, you host a bye game, and amazing how much better you feel about things. Florida Atlantic 56, FAMU 14, season opener last night. Flagler Credit Union Stadium. We're going to take a deep dive into it. Live edition the day after Florida Atlantic Voice, the Inside Florida Atlantic podcast, presented by Robes Law Group, R-O-B-E-S, robeslawgroup.com. Personal injury lawyers based out of Delray Beach. They are there for you. Any of your personal injury needs, the best in the business. Robes Law Group, R-O-B-E-S, robeslawgroup.com. I want everybody to know and be abundantly aware that your boy Ken LaVicka, by the way, I'm Ken LaVicka, the voice of FAU. I'm not just the guy behind the microphone, okay? I'm a family man. I'm a blue-collar American. I woke up this morning. What have I been doing all morning? I have been mowing my backyard, digging out from under the jungle that has formed because of the annoying rain mixed with the humidity, completely overgrown. But for me and for my family and for the greater good of the nation, I am mowing my lawn this morning before the NFL kicks off at 1 p.m. Just a couple of moments here. We're going to bring in Robbie Lastella, FAU Owl's Nest. He is the man who has all of the context. He is the man who has the brain power here. We're going to recap this win, 56-14 over FAMU. Christian says, good morning, Ken. Christian, good morning to you. He affectionately calls me Unc. I'm an old man. He is a Gen Z that I have really no cultural connection to. But, man, I love seeing the guy, and I'll see him at the Shula Bowl next weekend. We're going to talk a little Shula Bowl as well, but we're going to save the full-fledged preview for tomorrow. Florida Atlantic Voice Monday Night Live at Beer Garden in Boca Raton. So come on out. Starts at 6 o'clock. Come out, have a beer, and get involved in the live edition of Monday Night Live Florida Atlantic Voice presentation at beautiful Beer Garden in Boca Raton. Those big pretzels are awesome. The beer selection is unmatched. So come and hang out. Just want to get to a couple of quick things here before we bring Robbie in. You never know how a coach wants to handle a quarterback who struggles, and Caden Veldkamp was not in his best form in any way, shape, or form against Maryland last weekend. But we got our answer very early that Zach Kittley was going to go for it. Zach Kittley was going to say, hey, Caden Veldkamp, I trust you. Let's make sure that we ride with this entire thing. We're riding with you. And you look at the first quarter of this game, right off the jump. You have Caden Veldkamp get out onto the field after a Jamari Sanders run. Dom Henry with a reception. No Heddle. Assad Wasim, at least he gets a target in that spot. Easton Messer with a catch. Jamari Sands had the big blow in this drive, 37 yards. Sands gets one more handoff, but then, hey, right arm, Caden Veldkamp, go get it for us. Puts a ball only where Dom Henry could get it. And Dom Henry, who did not have the best game against Maryland, he slipped on a route that led to one of the 4 Caden Veldkamp interceptions. Wasn't much of a factor. A sensational catch, and there was more to come from Dom Henry. As good as that catch was, his second touchdown reception was 10 times better. 19-yard touchdown reception for Dom Henry, and Florida Atlantic right off the bat up 6-0. And then what set the tone for the entire matchup? For the entire matchup for me is Tyler Skuvenek special teams get on the field. Caden Dutton-Shields takes a direct snap, runs up to the line, throws to a wide open man in the end zone, contributed on special teams. You're able to get Jackson Lee involved in that right there. That tells you all you need to know about Zach Kittley. Yeah, things were a face plant. in College Park. Things were rough. It was not a good watch. Zach Kittley talking about during the course of the week, 7 points in a game. That doesn't happen in his offensive play calling career, and they were bound and determined to get it right against an inferior opponent right off the bat, and they did. And I thought that was an exceptional sign. The main headline from this game is this was supposed to be a tune-up for the Shula Bowl against a more improved Florida International team. And FAU, 5 minutes into this game, turned it in to the tune-up that it needed to be, which was a strong statement. So, yeah, Ken, it was just FAMU. Ken, they should have done that. You're right. They should have done that. But nothing's guaranteed when you're pressing the reset button on the program. And so for FAU to cruise like we knew that they should, that's a nice step, and it gave you full preparation for the Shula Bowl next Saturday night. Robbie Lastella, FAU Owl's Nest, and one, he's very good at what he does. He's extremely perceptive, and also me calling the games. I'm in the weeds, right? And I'm trying to follow play by play, but as far as documentation is concerned, it's a little bit difficult for me during the course of the game and even in the aftermath as I'm trying to jog my memory. But there is a man who sits there. He takes note of everything. He observes all. He's able to do a little bit of research, and he's able to provide some much-needed context here on the day after edition of the Florida Atlantic Voice, presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. Robbie, thanks for waking up and hanging out. I did determine, I feel like 10 a.m. is the single best time to do this live on Sunday because it does give us plenty of time, even after kick our feet up. If you watch any of the miserable network NFL pregame shows, you can do that. I don't know why you do that. You evaluate your life if you're going to do that, but I feel like this is the right time, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a good time. It's kind of like it's that intermediate time before Sunday football starts, and it's some good reflecting time. It's a quiet morning, and it's good to reflect on last night's win for sure. There was a lot to like. I had 3 keys going into that game. I said I want 100 yards rushing. They did that. I want 300 yards passing with no turnovers. They did that. And I wanted them to get at least 1 sack. They got 2. And so they hit my 3 keys, all areas. They bounced back in, and it was definitely a good performance. Week 2 now, obviously, a big week coming up, but it was good to see them get that win at home.
Yeah, FIU glowing after they won the play within 10 points of Penn State at the half trophy yesterday. So a more consequential trophy is on the line next weekend. There's a lot of time to discuss FIU and Keon Jenkins, who, if you recall, gave FAU some fits in the first quarter last year before he started throwing the ball to FAU DBs for the rest of the game. Samusauce, what a way to respond yesterday. I think that is the most important, as simple as it is, the most important mindset to take from this is it was a response. And in my nearly 20 years, Robbie, I have seen a lot of close calls against FCS opponents. I remember Wagner playing Florida Atlantic to 7-3 before Graham Wilbert had to come in and save the day on the first play of the fourth quarter and pick out Byron Hankerson for 39 yards in the debut of Carl Pelini back in 2012. I remember Southern Illinois giving Charlie Partridge a huge scare in a season opener in 2015. So to have a home opener and an FCS team, you don't take it for granted. And you wanted them to impose their will. And I think that there was, in the deep recesses of people's minds after what FAU saw against Maryland, a Maryland team that, by the way, looked good again against Northern Illinois on Friday night, a good group of 6 team. Yep. There was that little sliver of, are they able to impose their will after things look really ragged? And they definitely imposed their will.
Yeah, and I mentioned the pass rush there, and obviously it's not all based around sacks, right? And a guy who I want to highlight that definitely made his presence known right away on 2 sides of the ball. You have Josh Roberts, right? He's a freshman, Last week we had Zion Paredes, the freshman of the week. And this week it's got to be Josh Roberts. He blocks the punt, but he also generates 3 pressures and 21 pass rushing snaps. That's a guy who kind of enforced his will as a freshman right away, which I think is huge to see. It's good to get, that rolling right away. And then on the other side of the ball, they got the run game going, which last week it was an issue. And this week it wasn't. We heard Akovich after the game talking. It was good for it opened up the passing lanes, right? I mean, the offense was able to do what we expected it to do. And I think you saw that because of the way the Owls were able to dominate the line of scrimmage.
You mentioned, I want to hit on both points there. Let's start with the running game. We'll go backwards with what you brought up. Jamari Sands, 83 yards on 10 carries. 8.3 a carry. That'll do. Same guy that even with the documented rushing struggles last week, just barely got above 70 yards for the game. He still was at a 4.3 clip. So he's finding room to run. He at 8.3 a carry, that's going to win you a lot of football games. And then there's Caden Dutton-Shields. And I don't want to skip over Xavier Terrell, his 25 yards. But Caden Dutton-Shields, I told Chris Newbold after the game as we were walking to our cars in the parking garage, shout out floor 3 parking team up there. I love the way Caden Dutton-Shields runs. It's violent. It's north-south. It sort of reminds me, and they're not the same build, but it reminds me of a Larry McCammon, where he gets the ball and he is going north-south. He is hitting the hole. He's one cut, and he's going to try and make something happen. There's no dancing with Caden Dutton-Shields, and he's been the number 3 running back, but I do think that we're going to continue to see him play a part in this offense, and a significant part, because he's so physical and there's no nonsense with him. It's really tough for him to, and that was the great thing about Larry McCammon. As far as plays where he would be tackled for a loss, they were few and far between, simply because he gets ball, he runs ball, he's not heading to the outside, he's just going to blast you right in the teeth. And then there is Josh Roberts, who you mentioned. And it's not just the fact that, what was that pressure number again, Robbie, from Roberts?
Per PFF, he had 3 pressures and 21 pass rushing snaps. So that's not all defense, it's just the pass rushing snaps.
So it's encouraging. And don't forget, this is the guy who had the block punt as well. Mm-hmm. Getting it done on special teams, recovered in the end zone by Lawrence Johnson. So, by the way, a 2-point conversion on the opening drive for FAU special teams, and then a block punt not far after. And so, like Tyler Skuvenek's, and then Garrison Smith just bombs a 48-yard field goal. And FAU, Zach Kitley, late in that game in the fourth quarter, he wants to go for it. He wants to continue to try and get some reps for the offense, even with backups in the game. But at some point, Garrison Smith needed some run other than extra points, and so you put him out there. He had already hit a 29-yarder earlier in the game, and say, hey, give it a go with that big right foot. And, man, that would have been good from 58 yards. He had a ton on that. I don't even think he hit it all that cleanly. It fluttered a little bit. So that was strong. And listen, I know that special teams at FAU have been a struggle at times over the years. And Carter Davis, who was 2 of 7 kicking field goals last year, now is the Miami Hurricanes hero for beating Notre Dame last weekend with a long field goal. That, by the way, is the most FAU thing imaginable, that taking place. And I'm not bagging on Carter Davis. I'm super happy for him. He's awesome. Great kid, great family. All I'm saying is the 2 of 7 last year, some misses in big moments, and then he goes and he wins against Notre Dame, has the game-winning field goal. But special teams showed out, and that's going to be a key component. I mean, Zach Kitley puts a ton of emphasis on this, and coaches always say they do. But that was one of the first things he told us, Robbie, was that, hey, special teams is going to matter. Tyler Skuvenek is going to matter. And so far, so good, from Jaysean Platt in game 1 to the 2-point conversion and the block punt for a touchdown here into the Garrison Smith 48-yarder. They've checked a lot of boxes so far.
100%. And, between you have Jaysean Platt, right? A guy who didn't have a role. He comes in and now is returning kicks and doing his job. I think we heard from Kitley after the game, and something he talked about, he said in the pregame meal, he wanted to preach everyone needs to do their job, whether that's blocking, whether that's if you need to set the edge, you're not the guy making the tackle. And the same thing kind of translates over to special teams. It's not the most prettiest thing in the world, but when you do your job, when things go the right way, you all of a sudden you're the one making plays on special teams. And I kind of thought that was definitely a sign of what Kitley was talking about, everyone doing their job. And so you look at it on tape too a little bit. Obviously we only have the TV copy, but you have like wide receivers blocking really well in run plays. Dom Henry, Mike Kirch in the run game doing well blocking. So this game to me was an example of what Kitley said. It was everyone kind of accepting their role, doing their job. And so I'm intrigued. And you mentioned Garrison Smith. I saw him hitting from 55 plus in Maryland. And obviously Kitley's not going to be, I don't want to say he's anti-field goal, but he'd rather score 7. And so I'm sorry, Garrison, you may not get all those field goal attempts, but he definitely can make them, as I saw it in Maryland and we saw it in game here. And so and then you met Easton Messer had a 30-yard punt return as well. And so sure. It was really firing on all cylinders. And to have that, everyone, like you mentioned in the opening, everyone was concerned. Everyone was like, oh boy. And I specifically asked for Alex Atkovich in the post game because he's a guy who openly said like he had offers from AAC teams, could have left, stayed here, week 1 was awful. And then I wonder what you're feeling. And then all of a sudden you bounce back in week 2. And so he was good to hear. He was, everyone kept their head up. And so it was a good situation. And so now, but you have to build on that. Everything was working this week and you have to try to keep it that way against FIU next week.
And that right side of the offensive line for FAU, and we talked about it a lot on here, and then the Monday Night Live at Beer Garden, it was much maligned last week. I mean, Alex Atkovich and Dauntre Richardson didn't grade out particularly well, and so it was good, other than an Atkovich false start in the first half. It was It was a very consistent, solid performance for those two, working in conjunction with one another, right tackle and right guard, respectively. You mentioned Easton Messer. Let's put a pin in him for a second. Fake Dusty May, I'm assuming. Robbie looks like the grandson from Wedding Crashers with that hair. Genetically speaking, Robbie, because you do have a thick head of hair, genetically speaking, is that something that's going to stick around in your later years? You're eventually going to lose that like I have.
Well, what I'm told is it does run through your mother's father's side. I believe that's how that works.
Which is why I'm here right now.
My grandpa had hair into his late 90s. He was getting haircuts into his late 90s. Wow. So I think I'll be all right. Right now, it's in a little bit of a longer stage. Shout out you, Fake Dusty May. If Ken saw me, he almost put me on when I was trying to fix it. But no, I definitely got blessed a little bit. Shout out Mike Birdman. He always points it out too. And Christian's hair.
I want to say this too. Wedding Crashers. If we're talking like Vince Vaughn, Will Ferrell, Wilson Brothers type movies, Wedding Crashers clears Old School by a lot. Like it's not close. Old School's fine, but Wedding Crashers significantly more nuanced and funny. And I will stand on that against anybody who wants to challenge me. Florida Atlantic Voice presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com, personal injury lawyers. The reason I wanted to put a pin here in Easton Messer. We saw the 15 receptions against Maryland, tying a school record for catches in a single game. He only had 4 last night, and it's a great thing. And that's not a disparagement of Easton Messer. But if Caden Veldkamp thinks he has to force, and I use that word, that F word force, because Zach Kitley said it repeatedly during the course of the week. Maybe Caden Veldkamp was trying to force the ball a little bit to Easton Messer. There was such an effort to spread it around. And in the postgame, I asked Kitley about that, and he said, yeah, I think there's a little bit to that where we wanted to get everybody involved quickly. There was a concerted effort. It wasn't just taking what the defense is giving you. It was, hey, try and feed these guys the ball, having them go up, make 50-50 plays. Jay Sean Platt getting involved in the passing game is wildly important because he's skilled enough. He's good enough. We know that. He's the one who made the decision to redshirt after the first month of the season because he wanted to get himself physically right and refine his receiving. He didn't take the red shirt to get better on special teams. He took the red shirt to become a better receiver, and that shone brightly in the first half last night. And then there's Asad Wasim. He's going to be the big play threat all year long. As long as he stays healthy, that's your guy right there. That's your take the top off the defense type of guy. And then Dom Henry is your little bit bigger target that can go up in the red zone. That's your red zone wide receiver threat. And the tight ends played zero part in the passing game from a pass catching standpoint last night. You hope that Kurtz and Collins can eventually get involved in that. But in the meantime, like Dom Henry's your red zone guy. That's the guy with the hands. That's the guy with a little bit of size. It's no mistake that those three in particular, Platt, Wasim, and Henry were the main targets because I think that was very much the game plan going in.
100%. 6 receivers with 3 targets or more. The game plan, and I kind of knew that might be the case coming in because I asked Easton coming into it. I was like, because Assad said his chemistry was developing to a point where Caden told him he feels that he's on the same level chemistry wise as Easton. So I said that to Easton, and he's like, yeah, after you have a week where you have 15 receptions, the defense will make a concerted effort to cover him. And when you have other talented receivers, whether that's Wasim, Platt, there's potential for big games there. And Easton said it. He's like, I'm more than happy with watching them, which you love that. He's not a wide receiver that can be a wide receiver one. There's always a chance there's a diva personality there. Farthest thing from the case with Easton Messer, selfless guy. And I think that's big for this offense. Shout out Brandon Hoke with the catch of the game there late in the fourth quarter. Also, I mean, Rick put out a post and I quote tweeted it. I said, Florida Atlantic wide receiver you this year. I mean, Joe Young with a 33-yard reception down the sideline. Quincy Brown with a slant over the middle. I mean, everyone was getting involved, and the tight ends didn't do it this week. Could happen next week, but I was looking at it briefly, and what I like to see, I'll pull it up. I was just looking at it. Run blocking. Mike Kurtz was the 3rd highest graded run blocker on the team. So you know what? If you're not going to catch the pass, they're not going to go for you in the pass game. Do your job, run block. They'll get you next week. So I'm very intrigued as well with Dom Henry. That ball in the back of the end zone, second touchdown of the day. I mean, that's a pro level throw. He put that ball in a basket, and Dom got his foot down. Credit to him. What a play.
I mean, Dom Henry, that catch he made in the second quarter, where he's in the back of the end zone, he's tiptoeing the back line, and he gets his left hand out there. The ball sticks to his hand, and he's able to pull it into his chest. That's unbelievable body control from Dom Henry. And if that's the type of receiving acumen you're going to get, that's going to be a massive positive. And Ken, it's FAMU. Okay, again, I just want to repeat, this was supposed to be a tune-up. This is supposed to be refining yourself before a rivalry game, and FAU made that. There was no struggle. There was no having to keep the starters in past when they needed to be. And by the way, for the record, Zach Kittley, just to show you where his mindset is, he wanted Caden Velkamp to be one and done in the third quarter, but didn't like what he was seeing from the offense those first 2 drives of the third quarter. That's why Caden Velkamp stayed in the game and ran the FAU offense until late in the third before Florida Atlantic was able to get back down the field, score again, and then got pulled. Zach Kittley completely understood that this was the tune-up, and I think he has a tough time just settling for, well, all right, that was a little bit ragged. No, he wants – it's almost like a superstition with him. It just reminds me of Nick Boyd when he was at FAU. He would not go to the locker room pregame before he hit his final shot in warm-ups. He would just keep jacking threes before it went in. Then he would race into the locker room while everybody's already in there. That reminds me of it reminds me of Nick Boyd, what Zach Kittley does. He wants to see something positive before he starts making the backup decisions.
Yeah, and that's a couple things that's intriguing to me with the longest quote from the press conference was how when I asked Kittley about FAMU outscoring him in the third quarter 7-0, and he was frustrated with that. And I think and I think that's very good. I don't very good is not a good way to describe that, but I think that's important because you don't want to become complacent. I mean, that's what FAU was able to do to Maryland, and I'm sure Maryland wasn't happy only scoring 6 points in the second half against us. So I think that him being passionate enough to leave the starters out there and get what he wanted, and they finished the game on a 17-7 run there. So it was a strong finish, and I think going forward, I'm interested to see how they approach late game situations like that when they're up, if Caden will stay in or if this was just kind of an early season type of thing.
It crossed my mind that Florida Atlantic has more wins over USF over the last 2 years than the Florida Gators do. How about that number? How about that piece of information right there? Billy Napier, welcome back to where you were like a month into last season. After that, it's great for and I did notice when you were talking about Alex Atcavage, you dropped an AAC. Be careful with that. It's the American Conference, and if you misspeak again, Soar the Eagle is going to come and cost you in your home. Don't disparage the league like that. Robbie Lastella, FAU Owl's Nest. Florida Atlantic has FIU in the Shula Bowl next weekend. Just a few more things for you, Robbie. Scarlett Jean continues to be strong, and it is true. The less you mention an offensive lineman, the better they're playing. But Scarlett Jean continues to protect Caden Veldkamp, right?
100%. This is why I love PFF, because you can watch every snap, right? And I mean, that's the only way you're going to see what an offensive lineman does. And he obviously, you see him out there, he's a mammoth, and he looks the part and he plays the part out there. But per PFF, in 115 passing snaps so far this season, he's allowed just 2 pressures. That's the doctor. He wants to be a doctor. And FAU this offseason, that's another thing. I can't say FAU. I can't say AAC. I can't say FAU. I got to say Florida Atlantic, AC. That's right. I got to say, but getting him back, getting Atcavage back, getting Daughtry back. Sometimes there's going to be pass rush in situations where Caden gets hit. That's fine. But getting them back to anchor the offensive line has helped the offense focus on the passing side of things, not having to worry, are these guys going to gel? Because 60% of the offensive line played here last year, and he had 80% with Nonar as well. He just didn't start. So that the offensive line being cohesive this early is huge. And they allowed 6 pressures this week. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. And so I think going forward, I'm interested to see how they do next week against FIU. They were able to rush the passer. Drew Aller, Cheney Jr., I believe is I'm blanking on his first name, but he's good. And so they're going to have their hands full next week for sure. And so it's going to be a test.
Caden Veldkamp is going to have to be poised in the face of pressure because FIU's defensive front will get after you. Last year, there was so much discourse about the passing game being too horizontal as opposed to vertical. And that really has not been a problem with Caden Veldkamp. Yeah, you'll see the passes into the flat. You'll see some wheel routes from Jamari Sands, who, by the way, had 5 catches last night out of the backfield. But Caden Veldkamp, he's going to try and hit those intermediate routes. We saw it maybe stumble a bit at Maryland, but there's no doubt that you want verticality, Caden Veldkamp's going to give it to you, right?
100%. 9.2 is his ADOT, average depth of target. And there were multiple times last year where FAU finished, under 5, under 4. And when you're passing it like that, and your wide receivers can't get upfield on screenplays and stuff, it's tough. And so for them to be able to move the ball upfield like that is very important. We saw them get creative with it. I mean, there's the touchdown, the first touchdown to Wasim looked like a draw play with Veldkamp where he was going to take it himself, and he drops back and finds Wasim wide open down the field. So that's the side of the Kittley offense that, week 1, it was like, oh my gosh, where is it? What happened? It's gone. This week, it was what you expect to see when everything's firing on all cylinders. Especially, they ran no huddle the entire game. Even when they were up, they just kept that tempo moving. It's only week 2, but it's a very intriguing sign to see Caden able to advance the ball downfield like that, especially after struggling. You wonder how a game like that may affect a quarterback. From everybody who said it, players, it's not just coach speak. He was wiping the slate clean before the bus was taking the team back to the airport following Maryland, and it showed against FAMU.
So you are going to hear a lot, and you heard, if you're an FAU fan and you were paying attention last night to socials or read the recap, a lot of attention paid to Caden Veldkamp and a program record-tying 5 touchdown passes in that one last night. I don't mean to throw cold water on the proceedings, and I don't mean to disrespect Caden Veldkamp, who was really good in almost every respect last night. However, it is not 5 touchdown passes for Caden Veldkamp, and after the fact, I'm sure it's going to be revised. The Asad Wasim fumble on his reception inside the 5 that was recovered upon review a yard deep in the end zone. While injured, by the way, Asad Wasim still able to fall on the football. Outstanding individual effort. That is, according to football rules, not a touchdown throw for Caden Veldkamp. It is a fumble recovery, simply a fumble recovery for a touchdown for Asad Wasim. So Caden Veldkamp, I'm sure he's going to get another shot at 5, maybe 6 touchdown throws in a game at some point this season and in his FAU career, but did not tie the program record upon, Robbie and my further review on that. So for posterity purposes, Robbie, I think it's important. That's eventually going to be changed because that Wasim touchdown not credited to Veldkamp, as unfair as that is.
No, it would have been nice. I thought it was maybe some home cooking going on with the scorekeeping. Yeah, I do a lot of summer league baseball, so I know, and you can get some home cooking going every now and then. But I don't know if that'll fly in D1 collegiate football, especially in the AC. So you're right, that'll probably get put back, but we'll see it again. I mean, there's the way this offense runs, especially. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but UAB has been a little suspect. There's been some suspect losses here in the AC and some suspect outcomes where I'm looking at the games and I'm like, this could be a game where Caden has a field day. And so we'll see what occurs. Obviously, like I said, don't get too ahead of myself. But like you said, it'll happen. And he'll get 5. And I think the wide receiver core just developing that chemistry like we saw this week, it's huge. I mean, I'm interested to see Quincy Brown get involved. That's my pickup of the offseason. He only had 1 catch this week, building back from injury, but we heard it in the offseason when I asked Kittley, who's going to be the red zone guy? He said he's got a 6'6" monster in Quincy Brown. And when you look at his tape, he was exactly that. When he was at TCU, he was a red zone guy. They found him inside the 5 a lot. And same thing when he went to nickel. So I think eventually we'll see him get involved. And Joe Young, we saw last night, get involved. And Jabari Smith, Brandon Hoke. I mean, Jade Carter's out there. He didn't get a target. But, I mean, I could go on and on about the receiver core. They're doing a great job with that room.
We've talked a lot about the offense. Let's just a couple more here for you, Robbie. Let's focus on the defense. Just listening to Zach Kittley's tone last night, and we saw Wilkie Denog hit Florida Atlantic's first sack of the season in the first half, but there still needs to be more pressure on the quarterback. And after R.J. Johnson III got pulled out of the game and replaced by Jet Petty FAMU's backup quarterback. RJ Johnson came back in, and he was a totally different guy. And the reason that FAMU was able to hit some big plays against Florida Atlantic, including that 65-yard busted coverage touchdown, 2 busted coverage touchdowns for FAMU actually in that second half. But RJ Johnson sort of set the tone by moving his feet and by tucking and running and keeping FAU's front and linebackers off balance. You can't do that against FIU and Keon Jenkins, because he is going to rip you apart. No, FIU did not score yesterday at Penn State, but he gave those vaunted Penn State pass rushers some problems with his mobility. And so FAU, that's going to have to improve. And Zach Kittley, I think that he wants to see more pass rush, because, again, was it improved yesterday? But was it good enough for you to navigate this American Conference schedule successfully? I don't know. Like that has to, and it's early, but that has to keep getting better, because the pass rush is still hit or miss right now.
Yeah, FAU is about on par with what FAMU is putting up against on us, and that's a little concerning a little bit, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. They had 7 pressures, and they had 2 sacks, one for Leon Hart Jr., one for Deshaun Batiste and one for Wilkie Denaud. And so, you're going to need to rush the passer, like you mentioned, but I am intrigued with our run defense. It severely limited FAMU this week, and it was solid against Maryland. And that's the strength of the FIU offense. They were real. That's when I was watching the game in the second half. I'm like, FIU is just dominating line of scrimmage right now. Now, once it got towards midfield, Penn State buttoned up, and they were never able to but they were able to rush. They were able to get some good runs in there, and so that's intriguing because our run defense has been good, and FIU's rush game has been good. So that's going to be kind of like a little battle right there that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Najon Barber had a good week last week. In terms of this week, let's see I actually didn't look at this one last week, but it was actually Zaire Horton was the leader in stops this week. The definition of stop is on my Twitter at Lastella Report if you want to go find it, but it's basically it's a busted play for the offense. And so Zaire Horton had 3 of those. Wilkie had 2, and Najon Barber had 2 as well. So those are in the run game. Those are going to be the key, stopping those plays, within 4 yards of the line of scrimmage, 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. And if they can do that and force Keon Jenkins to pass and obviously throw a spy or contain or whatnot to prevent him from hurting you with his legs. But if they can make that offense one-dimensional, I'm fairly optimistic heading into FIU. But obviously, the FIU defense has been improved as well. So this game is going to be interesting for the first time and in a couple of years for sure.
From an FIU standpoint, it's amazing what hiring a competent coach will do for a college football program. It is, to me, pretty obvious, passing the eye test and from a number standpoint, the secondary has been the most consistent aspect of FAU's defense so far, and that continued last night against FAMU. Largely did it against Maryland, definitely did it last night against FAMU. Those were backups in the game with the busted coverages for touchdowns that FAMU had in the second half. But Terez Reed continuing to fly around. Your safeties are continuing to play really, really well. And then you've got Zion Perrette on the other side, the freshman, who, again, it's really few and far between any sort of targets that he's getting, because he is stride for stride with these receivers. I thought it was another good night for the starting secondary for Florida Atlantic, and they've done a nice job of making up for some of the lack of pass rush from the defensive front, and it's going to be an extremely attractive matchup last week. Miami Central's Keon Jenkins, FIU quarterback, Zion Perrette, FAU true freshman corner, Miami Central for Florida Atlantic. That's a sexy matchup down there in the Shula Bowl, but there's no reason to even say anything to the contrary. Through the first 2 games, the secondary reigns supreme with this FAU defense.
Yeah, they definitely have been. Zion Pratt still only targeted one time this week, a little bit less volume, only 13 snaps in pass coverage. But this unit I put together, when targeting Wendell Fuller, Demarius McGee, Terez Reed, Jaden Sweeney, Dylan Williams, and Cam Goggins and Lawrence Johnson, who are in the second unit. FAMU went 2 of 16, and a combined Wendell Fuller, they targeted him 5 times, only 1 completion. Terez Reed, they targeted 3 times, only 1 completion. Demarius McGee, Jaden Sweeney, Dylan Williams combined for 0 for 5. So those guys definitely had a good week.
Yep.
It's across the board. You mentioned it, safeties, corners, all of the above. They're playing well, and that was a concern coming into the season, right? You looked on paper, they're like, you got 100 new DBs. I remember I was talking to the play-by-play announcer for the first game. It was like, who's going where? And so you kind of see how that's shaping out now, and it's shaping out pretty well, especially with the depth that you have. Cam Goggins was a guy last year who was getting starting snaps, and he didn't lose his job because he's not good. There's just a ton of guys in that room. And so I really think the depth in that room is huge because, things happen later in the season. And so I really think you mentioned it. That's a strength of this defense. Run defense as well. I think secondary and run defense. Pass rush, it's still not back yet. We're still waiting for the glory days of the FAU pass rush to return. But, get Wilkie getting involved, Deshaun getting involved. Those are 2 guys that are important. And Eric Brantley had a good week last week. So all 3 of your big pass rushers are building, and so you just want to see them keep having good weeks, and maybe next week they get a couple of sacks and they cause havoc for Keywan Jenkins. We'll see.
I think Tyler Stolsky's FAU captain linebacker, the club on his hand, I think is getting bigger and bigger every single week. I don't even know if Stolsky's taking it off. I think he keeps it on, and then he's wrapping more tape around it every single game. That thing, Mike Mareshko, our studio host for the FAU Sports Network, he said it looks like Mega Man. It really, like, Stolsky's club is massive now, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I do like the thought of it just expanding in size throughout the season, even after that hand is healed. I think he should just continue with the club and bludgeon people with it as the season goes on, because it's clear that nobody in the NCAA has any concern about the size of that club. So we might as well just keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger at this point. It is not lost on me that when you look at the turnover category, Robbie, the FAU defense still has a big old goose egg there. And we thought Chris Tooley had an interception. I initially called it Wendell Fuller at 0, Chris Tooley 8, because with those uniforms, which are beautiful, they bunch up a little bit, and the line in the 8 for Tooley looked like the 0 because you couldn't see it with Wendell Fuller. But we thought Chris Tooley had an interception. It was called back due to DPI last night. You would like to finally start seeing an FAU turned FIU over a bunch last year. You need to finally tick that box, though. You've got to start forcing teams to turn the ball over, force some fumbles. That secondary is going to get theirs eventually. They've dropped 3 or 4 interceptions so far this season, but you need to start taking advantage of that. It just makes your life more difficult when you can't finish off those turnover situations.
I feel like I've made the age-old saying joke about 6 times now this season about, that's why he plays defense and not offense. I mean, we've had a couple interceptions where I'm just like, we got to get that. But
yep.
You're right. Next week, last year, they forced a lot against FIU, and if they can do that again, that will obviously kind of help them. I was a bit surprised, this week they didn't, but credit to, as you mentioned, after they put Jet Petty in the game, that kind of slowed it down a little bit for their offense. They were taking the short routes, and they were accepting punting and just not having anything going. And they weren't over aggressive too much. They did make some mistakes, and unfortunately, FAU was unable to capitalize on those, but that's all right. And I do feel you on those numbers. I thought that was Jet Kuhlman making the reception instead of Brandon Hoke, and I was going crazy. I was like, Jet Kuhlman is a walk-on receiver making that catch. What is going on? But it was Brandon Hoke. So Jet will get his, though. Yeah, I think he did get a couple snaps as well. So, but no, I think against FIU. I think my keys this week were very offensive related, and obviously I want to see 300 yards passing and no turnovers again. But this week it's going to be more pressure, force that first turnover, and limit the FIU run game, because that's the strength of that offense for sure. They lost their dynamic receiver duo, Rivers, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name from last year, but they're both gone. So they have a rebuilt wide receiver core, and the running backs this year is going to be the strength for FIU. But good thing for FAU, that looks to be the strength of the defense.
I had someone reach out to me this morning asking, has there ever been in the history of Florida Atlantic football a game where 5 quarterbacks played? At one point last night, Zach Kittley, 3 straight plays in the fourth quarter, sent in 3 different quarterbacks. I've never seen that in FAU history, but 5 quarterbacks played: Veltkamp, Zach Gibson, Carson Krueger, Jordan Magwood, the freshman, Michael Valentino. All 5 of them played. So I dug in before I started mowing my backyard, like a good American citizen does. I looked, and there's certainly Howard Snellenberger would have never played 5 quarterbacks, so I didn't even bother to look. He was big into play 2 quarterbacks because you never know when you might need reinforcements. That was his big thing. Carl Pelini definitely didn't happen. A lot of 2 quarterback situations, though, in the Carl Pelini era due to injuries or poor performance. Charlie Partridge absolutely never played 5 quarterbacks. Lane Kiffin, that would be the one coach in FAU history that would have, like Zach Kittley, played 5 quarterbacks in a game. But I could not find, even in the 69-point performance against North Texas regular season 2017, there were only 2 quarterbacks that played in that game. Jason Driscoll played the vast majority of that game because Lane Kiffin was trying to run it up, because that's Lane. I did look. The closest thing to 5 quarterbacks, and it didn't happen under Herman, it didn't happen under Taggart. The closest thing to 5 quarterbacks, and it's not that close, FAU had 4 different players throw passes in the 2017 Conference USA title game, and this is hilarious. Jason Driscoll, 15 of 27, 269, and a touchdown. John Franklin, FAU wide receiver, 1 for 1, 49 yards. Cameron Solomon, wide receiver, 1 for 1, 22 yards. Devin Singletary, 1 for 1, 12 yards. So it wasn't just Jason Driscoll, but 3 other skill position players for FAU threw a pass in that game, and they all completed their passes in that game. That maybe is my favorite little tidbit of FAU history right there that I did not remember at all or appreciate at all until this morning. That's like peak Lane Kiffin era right there, especially that 2017 team.
I think, yeah, I mean, Kittley definitely mentioned the fact that he wanted to see all 5 quarterbacks. And I think what intrigued him the most, and also intrigued me the most, was Jordan Magwood coming in and slinging it, because that's potentially the future right there. I mean, I don't want to get too ahead.
Some zip on that ball. I mean, he's slinging that thing.
That's the freshman that has been committed to FAU since Tom Herman era, and I mean, the Tom Herman era, I'm acting like that's decades ago, but that's potentially the future. And for him to come in and just fire it to Jabari like that, I think that's intriguing. And obviously it was good for Gibson to get a deep ball there to Joe Young, because it could be, if he last week wasn't too good for him, and who knows the next time you get on the field, and then all of a sudden that starts lingering in your mind a little bit. He went down, led a scoring drive, had a good pass as well. Hopefully, no dire situations ever happen where he needs to come in other than blowouts like that, but it's good for him to get, some that off of his shoulders a little bit. I like seeing all the running backs, Ethan Irvin, all the wide receivers, Brandon Hoke. If he keeps making those plays, though, it's gonna, in today's portal era, that's a little scary, but you know what? We'll take it. That's awesome. To see a freshman like that, a local guy whose family is a local family, they support the team. I love all that stuff. So I love all that stuff, and that's good for him to make that catch as well. So I like seeing the youth out there for sure.
Robbie, you know you always have an open door policy here on these day after editions of the Florida Atlantic Voice. Awesome context to all this stuff. Robbie's the one who's making the intelligent, pertinent observations, while I simply twitchy and excitable call the FAU football games on the Florida Atlantic Sports Network. I'll let you get ready for the 1 p.m. slate here with our first full Sunday of NFL action. Thanks for jumping on, Robbie, and again. Next Sunday, if you're free, you get your hair fixed up, jump on, and we'll do a post Shula Bowl edition. Okay,
let's do it. Yeah, as long as I make it back from FIU, it's never an easy trek down there.
Oh, Lord, Robbie, thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Florida Atlantic Voice here, presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. Just a couple of quick things here. And by the way, this is going to be available in podcast audio form if you couldn't stay through the duration of this live presentation of the Florida Atlantic Voice, or if you missed part of it, or you want to re-listen to it. And Robbie had a lot of great stuff there. But it'll be in full podcast form, Florida Atlantic Voice. Subscribe to it. I'm telling you guys, subscribe to the podcast. That way you don't have to seek it out. That way you don't have to search it out. It's especially helpful in the off season where these podcasts, the schedule gets a little bit wonky based on other things that I have going on, whether it's Inter Miami, whether it is other soccer play-by-play duties I have. But subscribe to the Florida Atlantic podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Excellently done by the FAU students last night. And Zach Kittley mentioned it, but this is Florida A&M. It's not exactly a high-profile opponent coming into Flagler Credit Union Stadium last night. And I thought that the student turnout was exceptional. It was loud. It was rowdy. It was drunken. And I want to be perfectly clear here. The Florida Atlantic Voice advocates for drunken crowd excellence at Florida Atlantic football games. Just make sure that you conduct yourself safely and certainly can get yourself home safely. But drunken tailgate turning into strong home field advantage at stadium, that is endorsed by the Florida Atlantic Voice. But that was a great turnout. But here's the challenge now. You've got a real high-profile American Conference opponent coming in to Flagler Credit Union Stadium in 3 weeks' time. That same student turnout, that same type of energy, that same sort of tailgate that then translates in the stadium, that has to be there against Memphis. And that brings me to FIU. So a lot of the discussion you're going to hear during the course of this week is how FIU has improved, and they are. Every metric suggests that FIU has improved. They pound Bethune-Cookman in week one, first time in their program history in 5 tries that they beat Bethune-Cookman, which is, well, kind of sad. And then they go to Penn State, and yeah, we can make fun of them. They stayed within 10 points of Penn State at halftime trophy that they won and flew back to South Florida. But that is impressive. And the trench play, both offensive line, but especially defensive line for FIU, looked like it belonged through stretches against a Penn State team that was picked to win the Big Ten. That's right. They had more votes in the Big Ten preseason poll than Ohio State did, than Illinois did. So FIU, there's at least a belief there. On paper, marginally more talent, but again, the hiring of Willie Simmons matters. Former FAMU coach, won the Celebration Bowl, has done nothing but win in his career. He's the real deal. And if there's any coach that's going to go down to Miami-Dade with a roster full of Miami-Dade players and make them believe it's Willie Simmons, who has a lot of roots there in Miami-Dade County. So this is not going to be, even though FAU has won every Shula Bowl since 2017 by 3 scores or more, including absolutely wrecking FIU in 2019, the week before FIU took down Manny Diaz and the University of Miami. This is an FIU team that is starting to show some pulse, at least through 2 games. So here's my challenge to you, the FAU fan. For the last decade, every time that Florida Atlantic is played in West Miami, and you're going to see at Pitbull, that's right, Pitbull Stadium. It's the music artist, Pitbull Stadium. He has his name on their stadium. You're going to see a lot of homage paid to South Beach and Miami-Dade culture. Don't let that fool you. Florida International is like a 10-minute walk from the main runway of Miami International Airport. It's like a 10-minute walk to the Everglades. It is nowhere near South Beach. Don't let them try and foist on you, the FAU fan, that they really in any way, shape, or form are right in the middle of Miami-Dade's rich culture, because they're not. It's Miami International Airport, okay? But for the last 10 years, FAU fans have appreciably, vastly, overwhelmingly outnumbered FIU fans on their own home turf and that gross-looking artificial turf that they do have there at Pitbull Stadium. Make sure it happens again. Leave no doubt. There's a little bit of excitement being generated by FIU football. It is your job to buy up all those tickets, as you have done year after year after year, and completely bathe that place in red like you've done year after year after year, and do your part to help Florida Atlantic keep the Shula Bowl trophy in Boca Raton, continue to have a stranglehold on the rivalry, and give FAU that boost to have them rip that FIU helmet off the Shula Bowl trophy when the final whistle blows next Saturday night. Okay, that is my challenge to you, FAU fans, to once again do what you've done for so long, no matter the coach, no matter the situation of the team. Florida Atlantic since 2017 has bludgeoned FIU, and do your part to make sure it happens again, because this is probably going to be a little bit tougher matchup than we've seen over the last several years in the Shula Bowl, which have all been lopsided and one-sided in favor of Florida Atlantic. This is a better FIU team, and we'll break that down more tomorrow in the Monday Night Live Florida Atlantic Voice presentation of Beer Garden and Boca Raton right off Federal. Come out, have beers, hang out with me, eat some of their delicious food on the menu, and do something with your Monday night before Monday Night Football. But this is a better FIU team. On my Twitter account, at KLV says, I have the link to the FIU ticket website. There's plenty of tickets available, and they're affordable. Buy them for next Saturday's 6 o'clock kickoff at Miami International Airport, okay? FAU, FIU, Shula Bowl, Florida Atlantic trying to keep it in Boca Raton, and it has been there forever. It has paid off its entire mortgage, which is pricey in South Florida, and it is well into its retirement and Social Security gain there at the Schmidt Family Complex, that Shula Bowl trophy. Florida Atlantic Voice presented by Robes Law Group, our presenting partner. We really appreciate them. ROBES, RobesLawGroup.com. If you have any personal injury needs, they are there for you. South Florida based, decades and decades and decades of protecting you in personal injury matters. ROBES, RobesLawGroup.com. Robes Law Group, personal injury lawyers. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock, it is Monday Night Live. Florida Atlantic Voice presents Monday Night Live. The presenting sponsor, once again, Robes Law Group, Beer Garden in Boca Raton, Federal, just north of the Boca Raton Resort. Easy to get to. What a great bar setup they have there. We'll be in that main area. We're going to be on the main stage starting at 6 o'clock. So open air bar, or you can sit inside. But the menu is awesome. It's the most unique menu in all of Boca Raton. The beer selection, as you'd imagine, Beer Garden, it's German. Beers upon beers upon beers upon beers. Beers that you've drank before, beers that maybe you haven't drank in 20 years, beers you've never heard of, right there at Beer Garden in Boca Raton. Live, Florida Atlantic Voice, Monday Night Live, as we give out our Week 2 FAU awards for the win over FAMU, and then we preview Florida International in that game as well against FIU next Saturday in the Shula Bowl. Want to thank everybody for hanging out in the chat. Want to thank everybody for participating, for watching, for listening. And again, this is going to be in full audio podcast form momentarily, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Florida Atlantic Voice podcast, because you can never have too many options to get caught up with FAU football, and this extends in FAU basketball season as well. I'm also the voice of FAU basketball, but the Florida Atlantic voice is the Inside Florida Atlantic podcast. I'm the voice of FAU, Ken LaVicka. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll talk to you at Beer Garden and Boca Raton for Monday Night Live tomorrow. Talk to you later, everybody. Enjoy your full Sunday of week 1 of the NFL. This has been the Florida Atlantic Voice presented by Robes Law Group. Bye-bye.